What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Phaithful Fanatics show. We are streaming to you guys here on the DSM-Media Philadelphia YouTube and Twitter channels. I'm one half of your host tonight, Dylan Davis. My co-host tonight, my guest tonight, Mr. Connor Thomas. Guys, you can find him in the mornings over on 97.5 The Fanatic, producing the Kincaid and Salchunas show. He's also the host of the Locked On Phillies podcast and contributing over at Bleacher Report. He's a busy man on top of being a kick-ass trivia player, so we won't take up too much of his time tonight. But the Eagles are just a few days away from their rematch with the Kansas City Chiefs here in Super Bowl 59. So we got a lot of important business to get to, my man. But thank you for joining the show again. And how you been?
I've been great, man. Thank you for having me as always. I appreciate that. I mean, I've just been excited about the Birds. I know I'm decked out in all Sixers stuff today, just what I had on. But, yeah, I know. I mean, they had a nice win last night. But we're focused on football right now in Philly, and I'm so zoned in on Sunday. It's a great opportunity for this team. I think they're in a really, really good spot.
Yeah, I agree, man. Obviously, I think we went into Super Bowl 57 as 1.5-point favorites. Possibly today, we are 1.5-point underdogs heading into this one. Obviously, different Eagles team, different Chiefs team. So let's get into it. I guess comparing the two, right? We know what a heartbreaking loss that was. Jalen Hurts was out of his mind. Defense couldn't get a stop, etc. You got an MVP candidate in Saquon Barkley. You got potentially the number one defense, number one in a lot of statistical categories this year in the Eagles defense. What to you, this might sound like a silly question, but what to you is the bigger difference in this rematch? Is it this revamped Vic Fangio defense, or is it Saquon Barkley, who's quite possibly the MVP of the league?
Yeah, you know what? As much as I love Saquon, I think he's going to be a huge factor in this game. The issue last time he played Mahomes is the defense didn't get the job done. They couldn't stop him in the second half. And Hurts balled out, played a great game. I expect that from him again because we've seen in championship games, this dude just takes care of business. So I expect him to have a great game. I expect Saquon to have a great game. But what's going to be important is if Vic Fangio can get over this 0-8 slide against Patrick Mahomes in his career, if this Eagles defense, when it counts, can hold up, I don't think there's any way. Like, you could put together the best 22 players in the NFL that are not on the Kansas City Chiefs and put them on a team and have them play Kansas City in the Super Bowl. And ultimately, it would come down to, I think, Patrick Mahomes with the ball in his hands at the end of the game or something close to that situation. And if you're in that situation, it's going to be very similar to the snow game against the Rams in the divisional round where you're going to have to stack up and make a stop. Yep. And that's just Super Bowl football against Patrick Mahomes. That's how you get it done. And that's why I think the defense is going to have the better day on Sunday. They just, like, the Chiefs' defense is solid. Very good. Steve Spagnuolo has done an incredible job with them this year. But the bread and butter of that team is Andy Reid and Mahomes. And at the end of the day, if you can stop them to some extent, slow them down even, or stop them when it counts, that's what's going to be the difference in winning this football game.
Yeah, you mentioned the 0-8 record, and I don't know if it tells the whole story. I think the last time Fangio's defense and Mahomes met, I think it was 21-14 with that Miami Dolphins team last year. I think Mahomes threw for like sub 200 or whatever. But no, it's an excellent point, and I do agree with you because I think this Eagles defense, specifically in the secondary, is the biggest difference maker between 22 and now. You can go all the way back to 2017, bro. Like, we're blessed to be in our third Super Bowl appearance in like 7 or 8 years, okay? But on the defensive side of the ball, hasn't gotten too much production in the big game, right? You got the one turnover against Brady. I don't believe Brady punted and that offensive punted.
They did not that whole game, no.
No, and Mahomes and the Chiefs didn't punt. So the first opportunity we get to send Cooper DeJean or Britton Covey back there is already a win. Let me ask you this. Travis Kelce, obviously very important in past seasons to the Kansas City Chiefs. Doesn't quite feel like the same Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes connection this year, obviously getting older. Are you throwing the rookie on him? Are you throwing Cooper DeJean at Travis Kelce in the big game?
I'm not. And part of the reason I'm not is because Cooper DeJean, what makes him so special defending the middle of the field, being a great nickel corner, is he's a guy with this great short burst speed. He can close a gap very, very quickly. He can get physical with players. We saw with the Derrick Henry tackle in Baltimore earlier this year. Like, this dude's like, he's physical. He can hit. He's not much bigger than I am, and he goes out there and he just levels dudes. It's crazy the athleticism he plays with. I got to. I'm a busy guy. But the thing that I worry about is Travis Kelce almost plays like that basketball style of tight end play where he just gets positioned, boxes you out, And the next thing you know, like you're trying to play position, you're not in a great position for the tackle because you're trying to fight over that and not get a PI. And then he's got an extra 15, 20 on the catch. I'd rather have a bigger body player. That's why I would like to see Zach Bond take on that responsibility. I also think Zach Bond has kind of been the guy, as good as Cooper DeJean has been. Like, if you ask me on this Eagles defense, outside of like obviously in that second level of the defense. So we're talking interior corners, we're talking linebackers, we're talking maybe a safety coming up in the box. He's been the best player on that level of the field for the Eagles. In the biggest game against their biggest offensive threat, I want our best guy on him. So that's why I'd go with Bond. If they do put Cooper DeJean on him, I think that's fine. But if you do that, number 8 back there, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's going to have to come downhill quick to make some plays if you're going to keep him from getting yards after the catch. We've seen him do this offseason, or this postseason, I should say.
What a sentence that I never thought you'd be saying to me on February 5th, 2025. Let the DPOY, Mr. Zach Bond, go one-on-one with Travis Kelce in the biggest game of the season. But here we are, man. The dude's been unbelievable. The defense obviously going to play a major role. Saquon, I got to ask you. It's the conversation ever since 2 weeks ago when these two teams won their conference championships. You know, you hear national media, you hear other podcasts, you hear social media, you see all this talk of how are they going to stop Saquon? Just load the box, Connor. Just load the box. Why haven't other teams thought of that? Just load the box. What does Saquon Barkley's day look like for you? Is there any chance in hell that Steve Spagnuolo's defense figures out a little bit how to slow down Saquon Barkley?
No, there's no chance. No. There's not a defense on this planet that could stop this man in this offensive line right now. Part of the important thing, Jalen Hurts is healthy. The knee was a little bit of an issue after that game against the Rams, but he looked great in the conference championship game. If he can run a little bit, he opens up at least the threat of defending that read option type of play, which slows you down a step. Saquon Barkley is getting the most yards before contact in the NFL, and he has for pretty much the whole season. That's credit to the offensive line. So he's going to get space. And the Chiefs, if you look at what they did in that AFC Championship game, the Bills kind of shot themselves in the foot a little bit with how they didn't use James Cook. James Cook was effective, but because they had Josh Allen, they're like, okay, well, we got to put the ball in the hands of our guy. And they kind of took the running game out of the game more than they should have. But I say that to say this. The Chiefs' defense has not been exceptional at stopping the run recently. The Eagles' offense has been exceptional at creating run opportunities all season long. Like Saquon is, if he doesn't break a big one, I'd be shocked.
Yeah.
Because at this point, he has taken on we talk about like Nick Foles in 2017, 2018, and the run he went on, which was really 2 games, as like this larger than life deity here in Philadelphia that nobody could have stopped, not even Tom Brady or Bill Belichick. Saquon Barkley has been on this like Nick Foles trajectory for pretty much 3 months.
Yeah.
Like he's unbelievable. I don't see him getting slowed down by anybody. He's going to be a huge factor in this game. If I had to guess, I'm going to say that he ends around like 135 and 1, maybe 2 scores, which doesn't sound crazy for him, but in a Super Bowl against Mahomes and the Chiefs, that's a big, big day.
Right, and normally that would be well above the pay grade of the Super Bowl MVP, which you would think he would be taking home at that point. But that's what I mean by like figure out, man. Like that's what we've had like comments in the past from like Commanders fans heading into the championship game and the Rams fans, and it's just like, well, if we could slow down Saquon, I'm like, well, what is slowing down Saquon Barkley to you this year? Like, is it $120 like and a touchdown? Like, is that slowing down Saquon Barkley to you? So it's going to be obviously something to keep an eye on. But a large part of the conversation over the last month and a half, really all season, has been the quarterback, right? What version of Jalen Hurts do the Eagles need to win this game?
They need the guy that protects the football, man. Like, listen, he doesn't fumble and give up a free 6 to Kansas City. They have a much, much better chance of winning that last Super Bowl. Probably do win it, honestly, because they're playing a different kind of defense down the stretch. But the biggest thing that Jalen Hurts has done, really since the bye week, is he is taking care of the football. And that's what separates him. Yeah, right? It's crazy. And Mahomes, for as good as he's been in winning football games this year, first like month and a half, 2 months of the season, I know this because he kind of screwed my fantasy season this year, he was throwing some picks, man. He will take shots because he's the gunslinger, magic maker type of quarterback. What Hurts needs to do is just execute the offense. And that's not 20 attempts for 130 yards and get off the field. Like, if he's got to throw, he's got to throw. But I need to see him protect the football, not take bad sacks, throw it away when you get the chance. I'd rather you live to fight another down and move on, and he's done an exceptional job about that. I don't need Jalen Hurts to go for 300. but I also don't want to see him play conservatively. Just find that middle ground that he's lived in for a while. Be the guy who executes things, and let the playmakers around you be the ones who totally decide this game. And by doing that, he will be the guy that decides this game by facilitating the offense so that other guys get the opportunity to make those plays.
Yep, and then shut everybody the hell up this entire offseason.
Would love that.
Lombardi. But you brought up the other guys, right? Obviously, Saquon gets a majority, if not 90% of the attention. AJ had a big touchdown in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Goddard had a hell of a game. It felt like 100 big third down receptions in that game. Smitty, in the last 3 games, including the Super Bowl against Kansas City Chiefs, has had good success against Spagnuolo defenses. Who is the other guy? Swipe aside 26. Who's the other guy on offense that you're looking at to produce and have a day on Sunday?
Well, AJ looked really good in the championship game. That's great to see after the knee issue and everything, and reading the book and all that stuff that everyone questions. AJ Brown still as good as we think. I did not. I'm not a big reader, believe it or not. Yeah, but I will have to get it when they win the Super Bowl. But AJ looked good. Devontae, we know he's always dangerous. He takes a back seat. He's a great teammate, a great locker room guy to be able to do that. But my guy's going to be Dallas Goedert. And part of the reasons are, one, the Kansas City Chiefs have given up a lot of yardage to tight ends this year. I believe they are the worst team in the NFL as far as yardage allowed to tight ends. And the weak spot of the Philadelphia Eagles offense coming into this game is going to be that interior offensive line. It'll probably be Cam Jurgens. I say probably, like 99% probably Cam Jurgens at center. It'll be Landon Dickerson at right guard. But you're going to be looking at, left guard. But you're going to be looking at 2 guys that were banged up in the conference championship game that both fought through injuries. And they're going to match up with Chris Jones. And they're also going to match up with Steve Spagnuolo's timely blitz packages. So if I'm the Eagles, part of my game plan is going to be to get Hurts out of the pocket design sometimes, right? Shift that point of emphasis so that when Chris Jones pushes up the field, you don't have a pocket collapsing. And when you run those rollout patterns, it's going to be the tight end in the flat that you see a lot of. And we've seen Dallas Goedert use that area of the field really well in the postseason. So I think Dallas Goedert is going to be the guy that you look at think to 17, man. Think about what Zach Ertz was for this team. And I think Zach Ertz in 17-18 was a better tight end than what Dallas Goedert is right now. But I mean, that's a high bar. He was arguably the best in football. Right. When you needed a big play, when you needed a third down, a fourth down, that was the guy who you wanted the ball in his hands because he lived in those marginal areas. And that's where Dallas Goedert's going to be on Sunday. I think he's a huge part of them making big plays to win this game.
Yeah, no, I agree. I saw the similar thing that you did about tight ends against the Chiefs defense this year. I was going back. Dalton Schultz had 4 for 63 in the divisional round against them. Kincaid and Knox didn't have a big game in the AFC Championship, but Dalton Kincaid just catches a ball on a ridiculous throw under pressure. Those statistics look a little bit different, and all season long, really. But no, I agree with you, man. And in a weird way, through all of his injuries and his lack of availability over the last few seasons, Dallas Goedert always seems important coming to the postseason. Like, even if you go back to 22, I believe he was hurt at the end of the year, came back, and then had that ridiculous one-handed touchdown catch against the Giants. The Super Bowl, like I said, he was huge, and obviously this run he's been big. So I do agree, but it's always going to come down to 2-6. Let me ask you this: what do I got for Connor next? All right, we've talked about the big names, right? Give me an underrated or like a dark horse on either side of the ball for this game that could impact for the Eagles.
Oh, dude, this is a big one. He may be one of the bigger impact players in this game overall, in that he needs to not be negative, and it's Oren Burks in the linebacking core. Oren Burks played for the 49ers last year in the Super Bowl and got absolutely torched. Now, remember, he was only in that game because Dre Greenlaw's leg exploded, jogging on or off the field. Crazy freak thing that happened with the 49ers. And Oren Burks gets tossed into that game, and Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce killed him. Yeah. So what you have to see, what's different this time, you might be saying, well, why is he not going to do that again? Travis Kelce's been great in the postseason. He was in that game out of nowhere when you had a pretty much Pro Bowl, maybe all-pro level player go down in front of him, and Dre Greenlaw. A guy's a monster. So Oren Burks isn't walking into Super Bowl 58 saying, I got to be ready to play against Mahomes. He's like, let's see what seat I can get on the bench where I can watch the halftime show. Like, he's been starting now for
3 weeks.
3 weeks, with Nakobe Dean going down in the wild card round. Yeah. So he's known coming into this game. He's the guy that's got to go out there. He's prepared coming into this game. He has a lot of postseason experience. with previous teams and everything. So he's a guy that's been around a little bit. I think part of last year's issues for him were just the mentality going into the game of, hey, I didn't prepare like a starter. And it's hard, too, when you're giving all your reps to the guys you know are going to be out there. He's a huge, huge part of the game plan because he's also going to take some responsibility of covering Travis Kelce and being in that area. And he got killed on it last year. So if he can just have the day that he had in the conference championship game, have the day that he had in the divisional round where you say, oh, well, I didn't really hear Oren Burks' name that much.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep.
That would be a great sign that the Eagles defense and Vic Fangio's side is doing what they have to do.
1,000%. It's like when Fred Johnson or Tyler Steen checks into the game because of an injury, and it's like they finish the game. I didn't even realize Tyler Steen played because you don't hear his name called. When you have that much talent on the defensive side of the ball around Oren Burks, as long as you're not an eyesore, as long as I can't tell that you're a constant negative, you're doing your job. And it's funny because that question was brought to you by my normal co-host Scotty, and his name was Oren. The name that he threw out there was Oren Burks. So
really,
it's perfectly fitting, man. All right, I'm looking at two things in this game that can play a factor or potentially decide this game. It's third down. And it's explosive plays. So the Eagles defense was third this season in getting off the field on third down, while the Chiefs was 26th in getting off the field on third down rates. And that number has ballooned in the postseason. They're right around 50% on third down rate in the postseason. Explosive plays. The Eagles' explosive play margin between offense and defense was a plus 47 this year. The Chiefs was a minus 16. Is there any area? Is there anything else you're looking at in this game, red zone, anything that can decide this game for the Eagles?
Those are the big two right there, and those are great stats that you just brought up. I mean, what the Chiefs do, it's funny because they're a higher caliber team than this team I'm about to mention. But you played this other team earlier on in the postseason. The Chiefs are essentially the Rams on steroids. I'm not saying they're actually on steroids unless the NFL wants to test Mahomes before Sunday, which by all means go ahead. Who knows what that guy's doing? But no, they do the same kind of things that the Rams do. The way that the Rams use Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp before they inevitably trade him, that's wild that they're going to move on from him. But they have this dink and dunk try and get hey, their chunk plays are 10, 15, maybe 20 yards. They don't push the ball down the field as much. The Chiefs are similar. They are death by 1,000 paper cuts type of offense. And that plays really well into Vic Fangio's philosophy on defense of this bend, don't break. So the lack of explosive plays by the Kansas City Chiefs is a huge, huge part of this game. Remember, that's what kind of killed the Eagles at the end of the Super Bowl in 2018. But that wasn't a defensive play. That was special teams. Yeah. So I also think in addition to those two stats, special teams are going to have to be really big for the Birds. And you're looking at a situation where they've forced fumbles, 2 of the last 3 games on special teams. They have been creating opportunities special teams wise. Credit to Michael Clay, credit to the guys that do that are more fringe players. If you can get a turnover, it's hard to turn Mahomes over, especially on this big stage. It's not hard to turn over the guys returning the kicks if you hit them the right way. So those are the margins. Those are the numbers. Yeah, exactly. Could be. That's what we're looking at. That could be a big difference in this game when we're looking at the kind of game within the game.
Yeah, man, I think that obviously, something I've talked about for the last 2 weeks, but just the talent on this Eagles roster. And when you go position group by position group, I would take the Eagles, I would take the Eagles, I would take the Eagles. But we all know, I think we all realize this game is going to come down to the final 2 minutes, more than likely, right? And when it comes to that, you look at the small things. And you mentioned Jalen protecting the football, the Eagles defensive special teams unit being so opportunistic. And they're all just little things that I feel like weren't there back in 2022, especially when you compare the two teams. What do we have? 73 sacks, historically great pass rush.
Ridiculous.
And then you look back and it's at the end of the day, man, Ndamukong Suh and Linval Joseph were chasing around Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. And, we're bitching about the sticks defense and we can't get off the field. This team is not only more talented, it's more well coached, it's more balanced, it's more explosive. And I got to give credit to Nick Sirianni. So do you have a message? Do you have anything to say about Nick Sirianni this season? Because I wouldn't have brought him back, speaking of being in New Orleans. That game in New Orleans earlier in the year, I said, don't let him back on the plane. Don't let him back on the team bus. I had enough of Nick Sirianni. Hand up, I was wrong.
Yeah, I got to say I was wrong as well because I said after last year, I wouldn't have brought him back. Now, there was no point this season where I was like, you got to get rid of the guy. My argument was always when he had those games, when he had the game against Cleveland, the game against Jacksonville, it was always say, these are the reasons why I didn't feel comfortable with him coming back as the head coach of this football team. I'll say I was also wrong. Like, listen, we made the wrong call on this guy from what he showed this year. He is a great head football coach. Like, he is an exceptional head football coach. At the end of the day, I guarantee you, there were people up in Boston when Bill Belichick took that job as the head coach of the Patriots. They were like, this guy's a cast off of the Jets and the Browns. And all of a sudden he ends up here and he's wearing these stupid ratty hoodies and he never talks to anybody. He's always angry. How does a guy with this personality work in a locker room? How does this guy get players to want to play for him? Yeah. And then all he did was one. Like, I think we're reaching the point of Nick Sirianni, not where he's in the Bill Belichick conversation or Andy Reid, but where it's just like, hey, sometimes stuff works, and you might not have seen it at first, but whatever this guy does day in and day out with this football team, he gets guys to play for him. He gets guys in the right position. He handles his coordinator situations great, and he ends up winning more football games, significantly more, than he's going to lose. So I can't put anything tangible on it. But the guy's just a winning coach. I don't know if you caught this on media night, but Jeff Stoutland was talking to some media members. He didn't have like the podium set up or anything, but there were some clips going around to Jeff Stoutland. And he was asked about Mekhi Becton and how it's been incredible.
His idea to put him at right guard, right?
Can you believe that?
Yeah.
Like, everybody in the world would have told you this guy doesn't touch like football strategy part of what they're doing. Next thing you know, one of the biggest decisions of the season, potentially personnel-wise, was Nick Sirianni's guess in training camp to try something. Like, we don't give the guy enough credit. No. I don't know that he cares that he doesn't get enough credit because he just wants to win, except when you see him yelling at the fan base. But I think that's just the competitive nature. Like, I don't think he's out here to say, I'm the greatest coach in the world, but I do think he deserves more respect than he's gotten. And hopefully with a Lombardi on Sunday, he earns that respect.
Speaking, he's got balls, dude. I'll give him that. Like, from going for it on fourth down and the stuff he does within the game to barking at the fans, whether right or wrong. I couldn't believe he had the audacity to do that after a 4-point win against Cleveland at that point of the season when everything else was going off the rails. And here we are. And I'll say this: you said, obviously he's not in the conversation with Bill Belichick. No one obviously is arguing that. But in terms of Eagles head coaches, he's one win away from being the greatest head coach in Eagles history. I'm
hesitating only because he may already have a strong argument.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
I'm not going to argue against him. He's gotten to 2 in 5 years. Right. It took Andy however many years to get to 1. And Andy got into 4 straight NFC Championship games, and that's the same argument McNabb versus Hurts that we're going to have. But listen, I hope for everybody's sake and the sake of my job over at 97.5 The Fanatic that we get to have those arguments all summer about, wow, are Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni the greatest coach-quarterback combo in the history of the Eagles, because now they have the Lombardi to go with it.
I'm glad you brought that up because we talked about this on Monday. Is this the greatest Eagles team of all time, or is it going to take the win? Like, it's hard. If they lose this game, it's hard to look back on the sole Lombardi we have in 17 and go 24 was better than 17. But where are they? And if they do win, is it just without a fucking doubt like they're the best team in the Eagles history?
They got to get the win, right? Yeah. Like, you got to go out there on Sunday. You got to take care of business, because if you don't win it, I can't put them above 17.
Right.
And if you don't win it, you begin the conversation with 22. Now, this team is more talented than that 2022 team. But if you end up going out there and, God forbid, knock on wood, like, you don't play a competitive game against the Chiefs, that 22 team played them to a tight game where it took down to the final second. Like, you got to win the last one or you don't get your name in the history books. So
job's not finished, brother.
Job is not finished. I would probably take this team over 17 because I think the defense is better overall. But that 17 team was monsters. I mean, we look at the names now, like Ronald Darby and Jalen Mills and that, and they, like, what they turned into. But at that moment, you had guys that were playing unbelievably. Patrick Robinson was a one-hit wonder, but that one hit led to a Super Bowl. So, talent-wise, this team is better than that 17 team, better than the 22 team.
Accolades,
but you got to win it.
17, you got to get the job done. So let me ask you, Do they get the job done? Give me your game predictions. I know it's only Wednesday. I don't know if you've given them out on the Fanatic yet.
I haven't.
If you're holding it close to the vest, I can wait to release this. We're only recording, so I can wait to release this. But game predictions, do the Birds come away with their second Super Bowl win in franchise history? And if so, who is the Super Bowl MVP?
All right, so I don't have a score yet for you.
Okay.
I'm saving that for Friday on the Fanatic, but I will give you the idea of what's going to happen. I do think the Eagles win this football game. I know people are saying that's a shock. The two guys dressed in all Philadelphia sports stuff are picking the Eagles.
Nah.
I get it, but I do think the Eagles are the better football team across the board. I think the strongest argument for the Chiefs is, but they're the Chiefs. And there are some times where that just doesn't play. Brady lost 3. Mahomes has already lost 1. Now it was to Brady, but like you're going to get into a situation where this whole idea, the aura around the Kansas City Chiefs, they're not just going to win everything forever. Right. They're not. They're going to drop some here and there. And the Chiefs are not the better roster in this game. I think Saquon Barkley has a monster day. I think Jalen Hurts does what he needs to do, does not turn the ball over in this game. I do think the Eagles defense forces not 1, but 2 turnovers. That could be special teams as well, but I think they win the turnover margin by 2. And I don't have an exact score because of the way I'm feeling about this game, and I'm hesitant to do this. I don't think it comes down to the final possession. I think this is a comfortable win for the Philadelphia Eagles. I think we're talking about the fourth quarter seeing a 2-score game with the Eagles with the ball at some point. And I do think Mahomes is going to make us nervous at the end. I don't think they win by 2 scores, but I think it will be 2 scores late in this one. And I think it'll be one of those garbage time, declared onside kicks, make you feel a little bit more nervous than you probably should, and the Eagles pull this one out. So I think it's a comfortable win for the Birds because I think there are just a few things that logically the Chiefs will not be able to take away from the Philadelphia Eagles. One of those is Saquon Barkley and the offensive line, and another one of those is the Eagles' secondary's ability to keep plays in front of them. So I feel great about this game. Maybe I'm crazy.
My heart needs it. My heart needs the relaxation. Well, it's not going to be relaxing.
It's not going to be relaxing.
My heart needs the 2-possession lead in the fourth quarter, dude.
Yeah, dude, they were up consistently over Washington, and there were points in the game that they won 55 to 23 or 24, whatever the score was, and we were nervous at points close to halftime in that game. So it's never going to be easy. It's never going to be comfortable.
Saquon Barkley made a 78-yard house call.
Yeah.
4 minutes left to put us up by 2 possessions, and we thought we were good. And then next thing you know, Puka Nacua is making jumping, leaping catches down the sideline to put them in the red zone. And I'm
right. So you got to close them out. But the Birds are winning this game.
Yeah. And who's the reason why? Who's the MVP?
The MVP is going to end up being Jalen Hurts. I would love for it to be Saquon. I don't think he'll get the opportunity against a Patrick Mahomes-led team to run the ball enough to deserve that MVP trophy. It's just so cookie cutter. It's always the quarterback. And I'll tell you what, as for everybody who wants Saquon to finish like this magical season where the Super Bowl MVP is the replacement for the rushing record that he could have gone for in week 18, let's remember how cool of a narrative it'll be for Jalen Hurts, the guy that everybody says, he's a running back. He can't throw. He stinks. The Eagles shouldn't have drafted him. Kenny Pickett should start over him. Tanner McKee should start over him,
bro.
Could you imagine all the stuff national media said about this guy? And he walks out of New Orleans with the Super Bowl MVP and the second Lombardi in Eagles history. Like, I love Saquon, and I would love that for him, but I would almost love it more for Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, no, I do agree. Like, it's more needed from a legacy perspective as well, or just for this offseason perspective. But I don't know. There's something about what 2-6 is doing right now where even if he doesn't have the opportunities, I do agree with you earlier, man. Like, there's no chance to me. I cannot foresee at least 2 or 3 moments where Saquon's not busting one for 20 or 35 or 55 or whatever. And at the end of the day, those are going to add up. And if those get to $158 and a touchdown or 2, it's going to be very difficult. But you mentioned, not having the rushing record. He's what? How many yards shy of Terrell Davis's?
I think it's like 30-some, 20-some. Yeah. It might even be less than that. He's going to get it in.
That's the more important single season rushing.
Yeah.
So let's go capture that. Let's go capture our second Lombardi, and I'll find you somewhere in the madness at the parade, brother. But appreciate you so much for coming on again. Tell the people where they can find you and where they can find all your work.
Yeah, you can find me on 97.5 The Fanatic every morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m., Monday through Friday, producing Kincaid and Sal Tunis on the mic a bunch for that show. So go ahead and check me out there. Locked On Phillies, do that podcast for the Locked On Podcast Network. We got Pitchers and Catchers on February 12th. So as soon as football season ends, we might bypass basketball and hockey season and just go right to
you wouldn't
Phillies
know
baseball.
it by looking at you, but it's all
yeah,
good.
right. So you can find me there, socials at Connor Thomas 975 on X and Instagram, and also Sunday, just to plug here for what I'll be doing for the big game. We're going to be on location at Patty Wax in South Street for the Fanatic Birds Insider pregame show, and also myself and Andrew Salchunas, who I work with on Kincaid and Salchunas. We're going to be hanging out for the game, doing a watch party. So we've got a lot of great stuff going. If you want to see me on Sunday, watch the big game with me, swing by Patty Wax. It's going to be a great setup. So I'm excited for Sunday. Hopefully it ends as well as we think it's going to.
Yeah, hopefully it's ending in a celebration, brother. But appreciate you so much for coming on, and go Birds.
Yes,
Peace
sir.
out,
Go
everyone.
Birds.